I want to tell you a quick story and just say welcome to everyone. It's great to be together today. I'm going to start with a story. When I was a child, we probably 2, maybe 3 times a year used to go and stay with my maternal grandparents, so my mum and dad's parents. And I used to love going to stay at their house, and they only actually lived a couple of hours away, but at that age, it seemed like it was almost like the ends of the earth. I mean, it wasn't even quite as far as Norwich, and yet it seemed so far away. We used to go and, sometimes what we used to do is we used to go and meet them on a Saturday morning. They used to go and do most of their shopping in the town that they lived in, and they used to go to the marketplace, and they'd go and get all of the different things that they needed. My nan was my grandmother was one of the most generous people I've ever met, and she always used to be out getting little things, little presents for people, or she'd just buy food for people. It was almost like she ran a food bank almost out of her back bedroom. She always used to be buying things, and she thought, oh, well, I'll just stock up and I'll have things that I can give to people when they come round to see me. Such was her generosity. And one of the things about my nan, she died a long time ago now, in 1998. I was 14, so that ages me. And she never ever did boring meals. You know, does anyone here ever have the picky tea? Picky tea, where you get lots of different things. None of you have a picky tea. Okay, or buffet, sorry. All right, Claire, all right. I'm so common, apparently. I'm happy with that. Okay, my nan, occasionally you get a sit-down meal, but a lot of the time you get a buffet. And there would be loads of There would be loads of different things that she would lay out on her table. No one would ever go hungry. She always had this principle that anyone who came to the house, she would want to feed them. And one of the things she used to love to buy us, especially in the summer, with from this local bakers, the most amazing jam and fresh cream donuts. They were just making me feel really hungry now. It's nearly lunchtime, isn't it? They were absolutely amazing, so tasty. She was, as I've already said, my nan was one of the most generous people. She was always thinking, in fact, she used to think almost a little bit too, she should have thought about herself a little bit more, because she didn't always take care of herself. She was always so bothered about other people. Always so bothered about other people. And she used to love buying people presents. But the thing was, she wouldn't do something, she wasn't the sort of person who would buy you just a normal present. She would always get you something a little bit unconventional. And I always appreciated the sentiment. Sometimes she used to knit me some really embarrassing jumpers sometimes. It was like walking into school in those when you're about 7 or 8 years old. That was pretty tricky. But one day, she said, James, I've been out and I've bought you a present. She was very thrifty. She loved Child of the War. She loved buying things from charity shops. She used to think, I'll love my money to go to charities rather than just to some big corporation. And one day she said, James, I've bought you a great present. It's a puzzle. I was like, about 10 years old, I was like, oh, wow. Thanks, Nan. I mean, it only had about 30 pieces to it. I mean, I wouldn't have even taken that long to get it done. I said, okay, Nan, thank you. It was a second-hand puzzle, and she got it at a bargain price. Guess why? Because I had a missing piece. It was still nice. I appreciated the gesture. I'm sure it was a good puzzle. But the problem is, it wasn't as it should be. It wasn't complete. It had a missing piece. For people like, and I can say it because he's not here, but like my brother-in-law Tom Gorn, who is a little bit OCD, it would have sent him into overdrive. It had a missing piece. Could it be, being serious for a moment, could it be that our lives are like that puzzle when we are missing peace. Incomplete, maybe a bit untidy, problematic, not quite as it should be. In this case, the God who designed us to live at peace with him, live at peace in the world, and to be people of peace. If we don't have peace in our lives, if peace is absent, or if it isn't there to the level that it should be in our lives, could there be something that is missing? First things first, as we begin this series, which is going to take place today and then the next 4 Sundays after that, and it's something I've wanted to bring, felt urged to bring for over a year. It was just a question of finding the right time. I've come to the conclusion that perhaps we have an absence of peace in our lives because first we have an absence of trust in God. Does that make sense? You miss peace because you don't have trust. So, for example, if I was going to fly somewhere on an aeroplane, I'm going to want to go on one. Yeah, I'm going to think about. I don't want to spend. I'm a child of a Scotsman. I probably want to get the cheapest fare and the best value for it. But I don't want to go on an aeroplane that has or with an airline that's got a terrible safety record. If they have like 1 in 50 planes fall out of the sky, I'd be thinking, I'll maybe go with someone else, even if it costs me a little bit more. Because I want to get to my destination, but I want to get there safely. And my faith and my trust in the science, the technology, the plane safety record, everything like that, even how much the staff put me at ease, is directly linked to my trust in it. My trust in it is directly linked to my peace when I'm on the way to my destination. Think about it with just 1 or 2 nerves. I mean, I always get a tiny bit nervous when I fly. Not that I've flown for a while because of COVID. But you will fly in relative peace if you have sufficient trust in the metal tube that's keeping you in the air, won't you? Often we live lives, I believe, of constant ongoing worry because even as Christians, we don't have sufficient trust in Jesus to provide for us, to help us, to deliver us when we're in danger, to deliver on what he's promised over our lives. God might have spoken something into our lives years ago, and we're thinking, come on, God, is this ever going to happen? Are we ever going to see this come to pass? It could be that we don't have peace in our lives because we don't have sufficient trust in the finished work of the cross, or we don't have sufficient trust in the Bible, or we don't have sufficient trust in the person and character of Jesus. But I really believe if we learn to trust, if we seek to expand our faith, then that will directly bring a greater level of peace into our lives. I hope that makes sense. Jesus spoke about this in the parable of the sower when he said, he talks about, if you've never read the parable of the sower, I encourage you to read it. It appears in the Gospels, and what Jesus talks about is a sower, someone going out to sow some seed, scatter some seed on the ground, and it falls on different types of soil, or it falls along a path, and it falls in kind of different circumstances. It's a picture of what happens when we receive the gospel of Jesus into our lives. And when at one point he says, seed falls among thorns, that whoever hears the word is like when seed falls among thorns and something begins to grow up. The worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth, he says, choke the word, choke the life out of it and make it unfruitful. And I believe that can be us when we hear the word of God, even if we might say, well, I'm already a Christian, I'm already turned away from darkness towards light, but when we don't have the trust in our lives that we need, we don't trust God to a sufficient level to bring us the kind of peace that we need. I really, really hope that what I talk about today and we'll talk about over the next few weeks will be something that will really help you, because I want to encourage you today to trust God to a greater level. Greater level. And it's not like comparing, I trust God more than you. Not like that. It's in our own hearts saying, I trust you, Jesus, therefore I can live at peace and be a person of peace. Sometimes we live lives of constant worry because we navel gaze too much. We are looking inwards at ourselves rather than outwards and upwards to just above the mountain and saying, where does my help really come from? Very often we might not even realize it, but often we're just kind of trusting too much in our own strength, our own ability to save, which is none. One of my favourite Psalms is about, I can't even remember which one it is. I'm terrible at remembering where things are in the Psalms. But do you all know the one where it says the strength of a horse is great, and yet despite all that great strength, it cannot save? The strength and beauty and wonder and genius of a human being is wonderful, and yet we will one day go to be the way of all the earth. And Jesus, God, is the one who goes on eternal. Sometimes we just look too much at ourselves when really we should be looking upwards and saying, Lord, I know you have said that we will have lives with trouble in them. Just to burst that bubble one last time, we are going to have lives with trouble in them. Unfortunately, I don't like that, but it's just reality, so we need to get on with it. I can hear you saying, Rosemary, just get on with it. You saying that to me. Rosemary and I got a special relationship, it's okay. She can tell me what she really thinks. Jesus said, you'll have trouble in this life, but do not fear because I've already overcome this world. Yeah? And he said, it's like every bad thing you could go in life, every good thing, every bad thing you could go through in life, I can use for your good and for my glory. If you're weary and you're burdened, come to me and you can have real rest. If you cast your anxiety onto me, if you choose to give me your problems and your troubles, then you can have my peace in return because you are my personal concern. All of you are. We're God's personal concern. When we're worried about things, when we have missing peace in our lives, it bothers God because He's not created us to be like that. He's created us to be people who have a peace that passes all understanding, even in the middle of a storm. What we'll look at over these few weeks isn't just so much how to be trusting and therefore more peaceful, more that we will take a long, deep look at who God really is. This loving, caring, just, truthful, wise, holy, powerful, faithful, heavenly Abba Father. I believe that when we really understand who He is, it will increase our trust in Him. When we really start to get not even necessarily just the full picture, but kind of more than I already have today, then it will grow our faith, we will trust Him more, and therefore we will say, well, I can live at peace simply because I've got someone in whom I can place unending, undying trust. You don't have to miss peace from your lives. You can be a person of peace and you can live in peace. But perhaps before that, we just need to learn to trust a little bit more, to trust God. Friends, don't be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. I want to just ask you this question. It's a rhetorical question, so you don't have to shout out the answer, but I want to ask you, do you perhaps have a lack of peace in your life because your faith and your view of God and therefore your trust in God it's not necessarily like it's bad, but maybe it's just too small. Maybe it just needs to get bigger. Maybe your view of God, maybe your current awareness of who God is needs to increase so that you can trust him more and therefore you can live a life of peace. Could it be that things in your life are pretty good at the moment? They're good. They might be great. I want to tell you there's more. If you take away nothing else from today, if you remember nothing else, if you write down nothing else, just remember these few words. The greater your trust, the greater your peace. I believe they're directly linked. Perhaps we can start this journey by just let's just be real with ourselves. I'll be real with you. And I will say, I've been on a journey like all of us have, and I've had times when I've seen great acceleration. I've had other times when I've thought, I feel a bit stagnated. I feel a bit stuck in the mud at the moment. But I've challenged myself this year because I started to see some things in my life that I wasn't so keen on. And I thought, I don't think I trust God enough. I don't think I trust God enough. And I was a bit miserable about that at the start, if I'm going to be honest with you. I was a bit miserable. I was like, I'm supposed to be a church pastor, and I don't trust God as much as I should. I was really annoyed at myself. But then I thought, I am not just going to stay where I am. I'm going to do something about this. One of the things I did was I read a brilliant, brilliant Bible devotional on the YouVersion app that just blew my mind and made me think, wow, why would I not? In short, what I learned was, why would I not trust this God? Why would I not trust him? Not sort of how can I trust him, but why would I not trust him? When I begin to understand something greater of the breadth and the depth of his love for us, what he's done for us, who he is, the character of who God is. Theology and these sorts of things can expand our relationship with him. They can grow our levels of trust and therefore our peace that we have with God. I can hear a Bible teacher here at the front and probably another one in the middle saying, yes, this is really good. It's been a personal journey for me, and I thought I need to do something about it because I'm not prepared to tolerate something that's anti-God in my life. I don't want to be sat there wrought with anxiety or doubt or worry or undue concerns. I want to go to God who has done and will do something about it. Of course, now just in case you're hearing something that I'm not saying, it's absolutely right that I'm not talking about us kissing our brains goodbye here. It's absolutely right that there should be things in our personal lives, in this world, that bother us. Things that we say, I'm concerned about that, and I want to do something about that. When we see injustice. I had a conversation with someone yesterday. I wasn't going to say this, but saw some people out in the city centre saying that they were pro-life. They didn't want people going and aborting babies and things like that. And someone said to me, that's really bad. They shouldn't be doing that. It's up to someone. They're not Christian. It's up to the woman. It's up to the person. And I said, they've got a right to an opinion. You've got a right to an opinion. What they're trying to do is say to people, there's a way out. You don't have to get rid of this child. There's a way through this. We want to support you. Say every life matters. Issues like that. Things should bother us. We should be bothered about things in our world that aren't right. Well, we say, well, I want to see justice in our world. I want to see good, fair government. I want to see people having kids, or families, people having food on the dinner table. But even when we have things in our life that aren't right, we can still live at peace. There can be things in our world, and there will always be things in our world that are wrong. But we can still live lives of peace. Why? Because we trust. We only have to watch TV, read social media, pick up a newspaper, if many people still do that, to see this world is full of worry and concerns. And it's not about a lack of care. This is not about a lack of care. What I'm suggesting is just a bit of a change in perspective. Using our hearts and our minds to work to our own advantage. Could it be that we retrain ourselves? We begin today to retrain ourselves so that we can trust God in the middle of an almighty storm and still be at peace. I believe this is possible. The prophet Isaiah had wisdom for so many different things, but he had wisdom in this for all of us, I believe, because he lived in difficult times and he saw things he didn't want to see. And I think one of the things, I'm not a person, I don't think I'm massively prophetically gifted, but from people I know who are prophetically gifted, one of the difficulties and one of the tensions that they live in is that they see things that they want to see, but they also see things they don't want to see as well. And that's a hard thing, and that's one of the reasons we need to be kind to our friends who are very prophetically gifted, because they see things they don't really want to see as well as what they do want to see. But the prophet Isaiah had this to share with us. Isaiah 26 verse 3, it could flash up on the screen, on your screen in fact. He said, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." So we can live in peace because we choose to fix our minds on the hearts and minds on the right things. We choose to trust him. Therefore, we can live in peace. Psalm 112, 6-8 leads on from this. So it'll come up on the screen as well. "Surely the righteous will never be shaken. They will be remembered forever. They will have no fear of bad news." What does that mean? It doesn't mean that bad news won't come, but it means that they won't fear it coming. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Their hearts are secure. They will have no fear. In the end, they will look in triumph on their foes. We can trust God. We can trust him today. Claire would do a much better job than me at this, but one thing we would both definitely agree on is that the original Hebrew, like the original Greek the Bible was written in, is fuller and richer than our English and richer than we could know. Perhaps I could just paraphrase those kind of two scriptures and say, expand them a bit and say they could read something like this. Anyone who constantly, any Christian, any believer who constantly thinks about, remains with, and leans upon God will be kept guarded and protected and live in tranquil contentment, a shalom, a peace of God, for the very reason that they choose to place their complete trust in who God is. Complete trust. Thank you. Is that a tick? Tick from the Bible teacher. Sorry. Oh, I don't know. We'll wait and see. It doesn't mean that we will not have trouble. It doesn't mean that we will kiss our brains goodbye and say, I don't really care about that anymore. I'm just going to live in peace in cloud cuckoo land. It means that we will still be aware of trials, of situations, of difficulties. It doesn't mean that we will divest ourselves of responsibilities for ourselves or for others. But we will make a choice that because we trust God, we actively trust God, that whatever comes our way, we can put our complete and utter and total trust in who he is. We can take this on further by looking at what the Apostle Paul says in Philippians. I love Philippians. It's one of my favorites. I've got a few. I love to share this piece of scripture with people who tell me that they're worried. I might have even shared it with you at some point. And what Paul was doing, he was writing to a church, and one of the things he was trying to show them is how you live as God has intended, how you live as God's treasured people, as his treasured possession. And he says a similar thing. We've gone from the Old Testament onto the New here. And Paul says, I believe that we have to choose to actively trust. It's not an academic thing. It's not just a head thing. It's not just a heart thing. It's kind of both. We have to choose to trust, and there will be a divine exchange that will take place when we choose to trust. I believe that we'll all move forward so far when if we just choose to trust God. And we'll begin to see a peace that maybe we don't have at the moment. You might be a pretty peaceful person already. Maybe you could be even more peaceful, even more at peace. Yeah, you'll still have the troubles that are common to the human race, but you'll be able to live in peace. Can I just say, since I've just taken that step to trust God more, I feel more at peace. This is why I'm saying that, sharing this with you. I'd love you for you who might be wrought with anxiety and trouble at the minute. I've seen it. I've had a taste. I don't think I'm all the way there yet, but I've had a taste of it, and it tastes so good. To say I'm going to be able to live a peaceful life, so good. It's like the greatest banquet. I want that for you as well. And it's not because I'm special. It's God said that I'm special, and I can do something, and He says the same about you as well. We can take it on further by what Paul says in Philippians 4:4-8. We'll flash that up on the screen as well. The divine exchange that will take place. Paul says, rejoice in the Lord when things are going well only. No, he doesn't say that. He says, rejoice in the Lord always. Always. I will say it again, says the Apostle Paul. Rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And this is where the exchange comes in. We present things to God and we leave anxieties with Him. What comes back at us in return? A God who wants to give us good gifts. It says, and the peace of, once you've done that, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. That means you could say, I don't know how on earth, with what I'm going through, I can be peaceful. And yet, somehow it's possible. That's the peace that transcends all understanding. That peace that transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And then just in case we haven't quite fully got the picture or we're not sure what to do next, I think Paul gives us some great practical advice. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. If you think about good things, fill your minds with the good things that God has done here. I just love the beauty of nature. Think about the intricacy, the beauty of a flower, for example. That's a beautiful thing that God's created. You can look upon that and say, thank you, God. Last verse number 9. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, whatever you learn in church even, put it into practice. Don't let it just be head knowledge. Let's get to work. And then he says, and then the peace of God will be with you. You'll have that missing piece. Because why? Because you've learned to trust. Here we see again the need to actively trust, to consider who God is, what He's done, what He promises to do. I encourage you could do it at Throne Room tonight, 6:30 here. You spend some time in God's presence. Give things to God and expect to receive peace in return. Give your thoughts and your concerns over to Him. Fix your minds upon Him and who He is and what He's done, what He's capable of. Consider what goes on in your mind. Think about filling your mind with good things. And when you do, the peace of God will be with you. If you don't feel it first time, go back for more. Keep drawing from that well. Keep going back for more. If one drink doesn't satisfy, go back for another. The jigsaw missing piece will come. Why? Because we've chosen to trust. Just in case this hasn't made sense to you, let's ask the question, well, why is it so important? Why is peace already so important? Well, perhaps it's obvious, but it's more than just so that we can live peaceful lives, whatever the circumstances may be. It's more than not being wrought with fear and anxiety and worry. I would rather live a peaceful life, whatever the circumstances, than a life where I'm regularly just unduly worried, unduly concerned about things. We're blessed if we're people. It's not just about us. It's more than that. We are blessed to be a blessing, and we are here to not only live lives of peace ourselves, but to show other people how they can live in peace and actually be people of peace in this world. It's more than just living peaceful life ourselves. We have got a gospel of peace to take out there to the world that really needs it. I think there's a lot of people in this world who would probably pay big money if they know how to be peaceful in whatever circumstances. And yet, God says it's all free. You just need to come into my presence. It's not just so we can live stress-free, nice lives where we just kind of bump along and then it's just for the rest of our days, so that we can bring peace to this world. We're called to be people of peace to an anxious world. Let's go back to where we were the other week when we were looking at the Sermon on the Mount series. Matthew 5, verse 9. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Wow. Blessed are the peacemakers. People who not only seek to live at peace themselves, but seek to promote peace in this world. We're blessed to live at peace, but we have a responsibility to promote peace as children of God. Romans 12:18 makes this clear to us. It says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you and me, live at peace with everyone. So that means protecting peace that already exists, but in places where there isn't peace, seeking to come and bring peace. Seeking to come and bring peace. At this church, we want you to know who God has created you to be. That's knowing, it's got two sides to it. It's knowing who God is, but knowing what He's put you on this planet for. Knowing what the destiny of your life is. We can only go so far, though. I can only go so far. You, if you were telling me the same thing, you could only go so far. Because just as Jesus gives us an opportunity to know Him, we have to make a decision about whether or not we're going to do it, because He gives us free will. He says, I've given you this life. I've knit you together in your mother's womb. I've seen your life begin, and yet I want you to choose whether or not you choose me. I've chosen you, but I want to know if you choose me back. We have to make a choice whether or not we're going to pursue peace. We have to make a choice if we're just going to put this into action, or are we just going to kind of like hear something nice at church that makes us feel nice and then go away and our lives are not changed one iota or only a tiny little bit. I really believe this could be a landmark day for you if you choose that I am going to live a life of peace. I'm going to get that missing piece back in my life. That puzzle that I talked to you about at the start, that wasn't created to be a piece missing. In fact, I've got this horrible feeling it had two pieces missing. It's even worse. Don't even know what it was a puzzle of. It wasn't created to be like that. There was a reason my nan got it at a knockdown price. It was missing piece. Pray for us. It might take some getting used to. There might not be like a magic bullet for all of us. It's not just going to just be sorted straight away. But I believe that faith and trust are two peas in a pod that give birth to peace. It doesn't need to be showy. It just needs to be a simple trust in your heart. People will start to notice. They're like, there's something different about you. Have you been spending time with Jesus? Do you trust God to a greater level? You seem so much more peaceful than you used to. It might even, next time you go back to the doctor, your blood pressure might be lower. That'd be good, wouldn't it? I don't think I'm in danger at the minute, but I'm like, seriously, every time, I do get a little, I have, because of some treatment I have occasionally at the hospital, I have to have quite a lot of blood pressure checks. And I am always a little bit like, I hope they're not going to start to find a problem here. I want my blood pressure to be, it might even be that is something that comes as a result of living at peace. We're called to live at peace. We're designed to live at peace. Isaiah 30:15 says, in repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. It doesn't have to be this big showy thing. It can just be a simple, thank you, Lord, that I can live at peace. And I live at peace because I trust you. Just tell you one quick story, but I was reading an account the other day of a lady who's been on this journey. I don't know who she is, but I was reading her story, and she has done a thing to make sure she remembers every day to trust God. First thing she does in her life, I don't know what's the first thing you do when you kind of first wake up, the first action that you take, the first thought you have. But what about putting something in place in your life just like this so that you can start the day as you mean to go on and begin to live a life of peace? Do it a few days in a row, it'll become a habit. It could change your life, just a little habit like that. This lady, she said that she makes a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. It's kind of the first thing that she does. And there are some words next to the coffee pot that she gets spoons coffee out of in the first thing in the morning. The words say, trust me with a capital M. Trust God. It says, trust me, I will provide all your needs. Perhaps you can write yourself a little note and stick it on your mirror. Perhaps you can do something like that and start the days you mean to go on and say, Lord, I don't know what today's going to bring. I'm certainly not going to worry about tomorrow, but whatever happens, I trust you. And I can live a life of peace. People notice it. When people, particularly people who are not Christians, they'll say, you seem different. You've got a golden opportunity there to say, I trust God now in a way I didn't used to, and He's allowing me to live at peace. And you can change someone else's life. Our lives are not, this is not just meant for us. We're called to bring peace where it doesn't currently exist. So I just wonder if we can take a moment, and maybe you might like just to pray, and maybe if you're next to someone or you're near someone, there's someone in here who you maybe are aware because you're in a relationship with them and you know they're not living at peace, or you know that you're not really living at peace, but you want someone to get around you. Why not just, we don't have to be formal in this bit, we can get up and we can move around. And I just love us to take a few moments just to pray. So even as we go into this last song, you can worship and give yourself over to God and say, Lord, I'm going to trust you and live at peace. Or you can get around someone or have someone come to you and pray and say, Lord, today could be, I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm going to trust you now, whatever, because why would I not trust you? In case you're not convinced today, we're going to spend another 4 weeks looking at this. And it's going to get really good. There's reason for it. What did my mum used to say? When you're in a hole, stop digging. It might be you feel God's let you down. It might be that your life feels like that jigsaw, missing a piece. You might just want to feel more peaceful. Did you feel like God has spoken a word into your life? Have you got a passion that you want to see come to pass? He is our Prince of Peace, and peace is our inheritance. Peace should be our portion. How's about we pursue it now? Can I just encourage you to start to pray as we go back into worship? I'm going to pray for all of us, but why didn't you start to pray? It might just be by yourself in the quietness of your own heart. It might be with someone else. I'm just going to pray, and then we'll go back into a little bit more worship before we finish. Father, thank you that you are someone in whom we can trust so much. And I just pray quite simply today, Lord, that you, the God of all peace, that you will come and visit us right now. I pray that you will come and you will touch our lives. I pray that you will help us to start to know how to pursue peace in a new way. We're not people of peace because we've kissed our brains goodbye. We can be people of peace because we've got someone in whom we can trust. And it's not just like the odds are pretty good with you, Lord. The odds are the best. It's a certainty. We can live lives of peace. I pray, Lord, for a new era of peace in this church. I pray, Lord, for a new era of peace in the places where we live, in our families, in our schools, in the colleges, in the shops, wherever. Lord, I pray that your kingdom will truly come and your will be done. Help us to live lives of peace, Lord. Amen. Amen. You may want to stand, you might want to just quietly sit and pray, but can we just over these next few minutes, we've got an opportunity to meet with God. If you don't know him, I'd love to be the person who introduces you to him for the first time. Come and find me if you like that.